Begin, everybody! Welcome. That's cool.
Should we do this again?
Take two. Today's lesson is brought to you by 25 Surprising Marriages, written by William Peterson. So some of you guys know I'm in seminary right now. Seminary is Bible college, like graduate Bible college. My emphasis in my degree is theology with a kind of concentration in church history. So church history is kind of what I do. So today you're going to see why it's awesome. We're going to start with two marriages, or we're going to talk about two marriages today. Do you guys want to hear about the good one or the bad one first?
The bad one. More fun.
Okay. I will say this. First of all, both of these marriages come in the 1800s. Okay? What was going on in the 1800s in America?
Revolution.
The revolution of what?
Oh, that's 1700s, dude.
Revolution. Civil
In America?
Gold Rush.
We're going to. Okay.
Early.
Okay, Gold Rush. What else is going on in America in the 1800s?
Civil
Civil War is the big one. Civil War.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, Civil War is the big one. And then you have pretty much the Reconstruction of the South in the late 1700s. When did people start coming to like California, West Coast, and stuff like that?
Gold Rush.
What
Early
years?
1900s? Late 1800s?
49ers, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so like during the Gold Rush, a lot of people came to the West Coast. Just want to put that in perspective for you, okay? So the first marriage we're talking about, this is actually a little bit like early 1700s going to the 1800s. Some of you guys might know. Do you guys know who the first Protestant missionary ever was?
To what?
Anywhere. The first modern Protestant missionary.
Modern?
Modern.
Modern.
Modern mean like the way
1700s?
like the way we think about missions today. Not like the old school Catholic style missions. Not like go there, build a building, and empower the crowd. Yeah. Like the way we do missions today. Like we go there, preach the gospel, build churches, things like that. And not like.
You said famous dude, right?
Okay, you guys don't know. I'm gonna stop writing it. Can you name anybody?
William
Peterson.
I don't know who that is.
Okay. If you go to any Christian colleges, a lot of Christian schools will have like the William Carey Missions Library or the William Carey University, but he's like probably the most famous name in missions history, and for a reason, because he was the first. He was the first modern Protestant missionary. Okay, so he's late 1700s. Why don't you think any missionaries went out in the 1600s and 1500s? Protestants.
There's no one to proselytize to.
Really? There's nowhere to go in the world that needed the
Well,
gospel.
they thought it was just Europe.
No.
Like, who did
Was there no
proselytize?
Protestant Christianity?
There was.
Oh.
Protestant Christianity started about 1500s, right? The Reformation, like 1519, 20s. Okay, I'll tell you why. Because people were getting killed, right? If you're a Protestant in like 1500s, 1600s, you were fighting against the Catholic Church, right? For a long period of time. There's a lot of civil unrest. It's not like Martin Luther is like, hey guys, I don't want to be part of the Catholic Church anymore, and then everything was good. There's a lot of like killing of Protestants, killing of Baptists, stuff like that, right? Like for example, when did the Puritans come to the U.S.?
Oh man.
Come on, this is really basic history.
1796.
No, that's not.
16.
16 something was like Jamestown and all that. But like 1700s, like early 1700s, a lot of Puritans came over, right? So why did the Puritans leave? Religious persecution. Okay, so that during that period, there was like a bunch of persecution and all that stuff. Okay, William Carey, he's from England. Okay, kind of to tell you what the thinking in England and in his circle. Obviously, there's always denominations no matter where you go. He's not excluded. But during William Carey's time, why are there not many missionaries? There's a thinking called hyper. I'm gonna draw hyper Calvinism. Okay, so some of you guys know what Calvinism is, right? God determines all things, sovereignty of God. What hyper Calvinism is, they're not really Calvinists. Sometimes they're not even Christians. Okay, hyper Calvinism is like God is in control of all things forever. There is no human will at all. You pretty much can't even move. Alright? Because if God is causing you to move, then you shouldn't be moving. Alright? So, at this time, William Carey was like a teacher, like learning all this stuff about the Bible, and like missions. Do you guys know the famous sport? I think Chris Cook. Well, last name was Cook. I don't know his first name. But Cook in his voyages around the world. No, no one knows. No one knows any of this. Okay, there's an explorer. Like Magellan, Balboa.
Wait, Magellan. Pause.
Christopher Columbus.
I thought it was Magellan.
I call him Magellan.
Okay.
Magellan.
No, did he go to Antarctica?
There's some. I'm not sure exactly where Cook went, but anyways, Cook was a famous explorer. William Carey basically followed his adventures, right? So William Carey had a map, and wherever Chris, I'm not gonna say Chris anymore. I'm not sure if that's true. Cook went, he would mark on the map some of the places he went, and start praying for those places that they would start receiving the gospel. Okay, so very early on in his life, he was very serious about people knowing about Jesus. So then obviously he goes to his church, hey guys, I think we should really start praying for these countries and maybe start going. And people in the church are you know what? You're done. Okay? If God wants to save those people in those countries, He'll do it without your help. Right? And he's like, what? And so he thought about it a lot, right? And then he basically went into the Bible, he looked through the Bible, is that true? If God wants to evangelize, India and stuff like that, will He do it without my help? Right? And he realized that's not true. Because every single place in Scripture, God uses people. Right? The account of Paul is the one-time shot. But even Paul had people who taught the Bible. So William Carey basically wrote a pamphlet later on called The Evangelization of the Heathen. Right? Basically, that's what you call pagans, people who don't believe in Jesus in that time. He sparked this huge movement in England, right? That's again why he's famous. A lot of people got really excited about missions, and then he's like, you know what? And I'll be the first. So he goes to India.
Does he live?
Yes, he lives in India. Pretty much the rest of his life lives in India. Do you guys know what widow burning is?
Widow burning?
Have you heard of widow burning?
You burn widows?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys know why?
Your husband's dead and you go after him.
I want to say this is part of the Hindi religion. I'm not sure, but basically it's more part of the culture, probably than the religion. It's actually, I have a friend that's Indian, and then I remember her wedding. They get bound together because it symbolizes they're married forever, right? So if you have that thinking you're married forever, and then the culture is male dominated, right? The husband dies, what happens to the wife?
Isn't that like Egyptians too? They have live burials.
Yeah, I mean, things like that. So,
Wait, so how come they don't burn the male widows?
because it's male dominated. Because women serve the men. Okay. All right. So when he went to India, I mean, there was a lot of this stuff, right? Widow burning. Later on, Amy Carmichael. Some of you guys will know who she is. She also went there and realized a lot of kids were being forced into prostitution. Right. So India is a really dark place. So William Carey goes to India. So just so you know his background educationally, he's a shoe cobbler, shoemaker. Okay, he is not an educated guy. When he was in England, he was just really, really poor. All right, I'm talking like dirt poor. You're talking about my friends was telling me the story when he was growing up, he was so poor. He used to go to Del Taco, and he used to just hang around there and wait for an order to be called. And if they called an order and no one got up, he would just take the food and eat it. And that was his only meal for the day. Alright, that's how poor William Carey was. Del Taco, stealing poor. Okay? Alright, so he goes to India, he's this, not a smart guy, he wasn't really, rich in America either. But, at the end of his life, he learns 15 languages. Alright? This is another reason why he's super crazy. His work paves the way for countless missionaries after him. Okay, if you are the first, and the Bible is not in any of the languages, right? What's the first thing you do? You gotta translate the Bible, right? He picked up 15 languages. Okay, I'm not saying that you can credit him for all the work ever in translation, right in the beginning. But that's huge. Okay, the fact that you're this prominent figure, you know yourself 15 languages, you're helping a lot of people. I might talk about him in the future. Adoniram Judson is the first American. Adoniram was really helped by William Carey to go to Myanmar. But anyways, so his work is just super influential. Apart from this, he also started like a missionary compound. Right? You can look at Wikipedia this. He had a missionary group with him, which is famous, called the Serampore. Sometimes you see the Serampore trio. Serampore is the place they were. Basically, it was like a group of missionaries that worked together really, really well. Okay, they did a lot of famous work. They would like go out and preach, and like a bunch of people would be saved. They plant churches. That's probably the most famous missionary team ever, the Serampore trio. Okay, but again, this class is on marriages, right, and relationships. So, why do I tell you this? I tell you this because you look at this guy and you're like, dude, this guy is like super nuts. Okay, he learns 15 languages. He's like not an educated guy. Starts a famous, missionary compound and like recruits all these missionaries and all that stuff. He wasn't a good family man. Okay, he was not a good family man. His wife. You guys are guessing her name? Dorothy. Okay. His wife Dorothy. Again, because he's the first. Okay. Whenever you're the first, people think you're crazy. Okay, so he can prove some of his detractors wrong because he did all this stuff. I mean, there's one thing people say like, "Oh, you're stupid. You're never going to like succeed in life." Well, when you actually go to India and move there and you learn 15 languages and you start a missionary compound and like you start like sending some reports back and people are like really excited, your detractors are like, "Okay, I was wrong." Now Dorothy, right? It's a little harder to convince your wife, that you're like super awesome. Okay. Because there's like stuff you see on Twitter, for example. That's not who you really are. That's just who you are on Twitter or who you are in letters, right? So Dorothy got to see William Carey kind of a little bit more firsthand. They were really, really poor in England. Okay. Yet I've talked to you guys about this before. You know the two biggest problems in marriages are?
Finance.
Finance and what?
Sex.
Yeah.
Why do you think finance is one of the biggest problems in marriage?
Everyone has different spending values and like, I don't know. It's how you kind of survive, kind of, in a way.
What do you guys think? Why do you think finance is one of the biggest issues in marriage?
Me?
Yeah.
Spending
Or any of
habits.
you in that section. You think about just money, right? But why is it like one of the biggest issues? Like people divorce over this issue.
Spending habits, or not.
Any mindsets?
You get what you want, and if you have to compromise or work it out, it's hard.
And it's a communal pool now.
You have to share it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I mean, if you think about why people want money, it's not that they don't want money itself, they want what money can buy, right? It's like how they realize their desires. So if you feel like someone's inhibiting your desires, you can kind of see why, people fight that out a lot. Okay, so Dorothy, again, being poor is a huge issue. What does William Carey do when he gets money, right? When they're married and he starts getting these like visions of like going overseas and like do missions. What does he buy with his money? Books. Okay, lots of books. He wasn't like the most educated background starting out with, but he wanted to learn. Obviously, when you pick up 15 languages, right, it tells you that you have a lot of passion. Okay, so he bought books. You know what his wife wanted to buy? Meat. Alright, so even girls can understand this. Imagine never eating meat ever. No, like some of you guys go like a day or two without eating meat, right? Like no chicken, no like tofu, whatever. Okay. But like imagine never ever eating meat. Like all you eat is like
Bland things.
they're in England too, right? So what do they eat?
Porridge?
Like
Vegetables.
Potato bread.
vegetables and bread. Like imagine that was like what you ate. And then not only that, okay, because there's one thing about being married and like, okay, whatever, I'll suck it up. But once you have kids, and all you feed your kids is like vegetables and bread.
Barley.
And so you guys are like, dude, divorce that fool. Divorce that fucking bread now. Okay.
Well, they won't know what meat is because they never had it.
Well, they have friends. It's not like, it's not like you live.
All children know what candy is.
It's like you live in a cave.
So let them eat it. Okay.
No, I mean, that makes it hard. England's a small place. All right, it's an island. All right, you can't get away from people. Okay, so they see people around them eating like, chicken and stuff, and they're like, gotta go home and eat this carrot. All right, so it's pretty nuts. We're eating carrots every day. It's pretty nuts. she is like really, I guess in some ways fed up. Okay, the fact that like he's always pursuing his ministry and like wanting to grow. And for him, you understand, what is he thinking? Why don't you get it? Why are you like not like everybody else? Like no one gets it. Everyone's like trying to fight me and think that I'm so stupid, you know. And that's why I'm gonna do the first, right? Because no one else is gonna go. I'll be the first to go. And she's probably also thinking like, well, there's a reason no one else goes because if you go, you can't buy meat. You know, like why do you want to live like this? Okay, so in their time in England, I forgot how many kids they have, but they have like a lot of their kids die early on in life. They have 6 kids, right? 7 kids. How many of them died? Two of their kids died. One of them died in India.
The first kid died in England.
In England, all right, and then another kid died in India. So when the first kid dies in England, right? And this is just so you know in context, it's common in those days, right? It was only in the 1900s we started eradicating a lot of the diseases like polio and things like that. But in the 1800s, you would have a lot of your kids die. But it doesn't mean it's less hard. It's still hard. So they had a kid die in England. What do you do when your kid dies?
Blame each other.
You mourn. Okay, let's just say that. Life is hard.
Point fingers.
Okay, like if my kid died, like I'm not thinking about like how I want to plan my next mission trip, right? Like 2 months afterwards, right? But it's kind of obvious because you kind of like are gonna mourn for a while. He has like 7 kids. Okay, so while one kid just passed away, he still has other kids to take care of. But during this time, he wants to go to India. You kind of see some of the struggle there now, right? So again, they're poor, they have a bunch of kids, one of the kids just passed away, and he still wants to go to India. So Dorothy is going kind of crazy right now, right? So by this point, when Carrie's like, okay, I'm ready to go, right? Like the church is in place, and like all that stuff's in place, I'm gonna head out. Dorothy's like, I'm not gonna go with you, right? And he's like, fine. Which is actually not unheard of. A lot of missionaries go first by themselves, then pick up the wives later, once it gets more safe. So when Carrie sails off to India, you guys can think of your mind geography, how far India is from England, right? They took a boat, so it's like super long way around. Okay, so he gets to India, he becomes like super successful, you know, a lot of people start knowing who he is, learns a lot of languages, starts translating the Bible, starts preaching, all that stuff. And he's like, all right, Dorothy, we're starting to get settled, you come over here. And she's like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, don't worry about that stuff, man. Just come. And he's like,
Is it his child?
yeah, it's his child.
Because
Well, he's in India all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess when he gets there, like he's just like, okay, we're good. Probably a few days into it, he's like, oh, we're good, right? So he sends for his wife. Or they might have worked it out before, like, hey, you're gonna come some of the new ones after. So he's like, all right, I guess now I'm coming. By the time she gets on the boat, she's 5 months pregnant. Right? And it's like a month boat ride. She actually gives birth to a child on the boat.
oh my gosh.
To put them in perspective, boats in those days are not like cruises, right? Like if you give birth on a cruise today, like you have doctors and you have like, you know, nice facilities to give birth in. On a boat in those days, like you guys know the sailor. Some of you guys know like the phrase like you cuss like a sailor, right? I used to be in the military. Like sailors, some people are just like really like really bad people. They cuss a lot, they drink a lot, and you can understand why. It's because you're only at sea, right? You're never interacting with like old men. You're only interacting with other like 20-year-old men, right? So you can understand why people are like jerks and stuff, and like really crude. So Dorothy gives birth on the ship with like all these men watching her,
Sucks.
right? And there's like no other women to support her, right? So right after you give birth in America, like you have like other moms and stuff like tell you how to like care for her and all that stuff. She has like none of that. On top of that, right after she gives birth, she lands in India. Okay? India is about as far away, culture-wise as you can get from the UK. Right? It's like super crazy different. Right? And so like now she's in India, now there's like tigers and stuff. I'm not joking, tigers. Alright, there's tigers. There's like tigers all around the place and stuff. Just like, dude, this is like terrible bad. Okay? Then they have another baby die. Right? So they have 7 kids, like child number 2 dies. This is like it for her. Right? This compounded with like the other stresses of like traveling, being poor, all that stuff. This is like it. What falls apart at this point is like, and like people kind of try to figure out what exactly happened. Like, did she like snap psychologically, or like did she not get enough training? But whatever it was, is that for the next like bunch of months, she lived in the missionary compound with the other guys, but she's like crazy. Like literally, like she's like a nice like, oh my gosh, like making like noises and like going around like probably throwing stuff, right? She's like just like berserk crazy. Okay, and they still have to raise the kids, right? So William Carey basically has to raise the kids. He's not good with the kids. And then she's like even more crazy, and then like all this stuff is like going nuts. And the other missionaries are like, dude, she's like kind of weighing us down in a lot of ways, right? Like we can't use that room anymore because she's like going crazy in that room, right? And then for him, so this is crucial, right? What does he do when his wife goes crazy? Nothing, right? The evidence points to that he doesn't really try to like comfort her. He doesn't slow down for the ministry. He continues to go, right? And because of that, I mean, they do really well. I mean, the missionary compound, they do a lot of translations. Churches are being planted. Widow burning, by the way, you can look at Indian history. Widow burning as a practice was credited in a lot of ways to William Carey, to stop it. Right? The Indian government recognized that William Carey in a lot of ways stopped the practice of widow burning. He's one man, all right, versus a culture of like hundreds of millions of people. And he was credited with stopping it. All right, think about the effect that man had on the culture. And he wasn't even Indian. All right, he was British. So, I mean, that tells you that William Carey had a huge amount of influence in India, right? Huge amount of influence. So William Carey, as a missionary, I mean, he's succeeding beyond his wildest dreams, all right? As a father and a husband, he's really failing. I think the story for me, when it gets really crazy, is that when she passes away, right, he gets married 6 months after she passes away.
Oh my gosh.
All right? even by today's standards, right, that's really fast, especially for like super Christian missionary guy. His teammates actually signed a petition against him to not get married. All right, like his teammates banded together and said like, hey, this is a petition, don't get married, don't marry this woman. All right, he basically just said I don't care, and he gets married anyways. All right, she ends up his next wife ends up being really awesome. All right, his next wife actually ends up being like the woman that he wished Dorothy could be. Right, she's like super good with languages. She like picks up. How to plant churches.
Was she Indian?
She wasn't. She's English also.
Oh.
Yeah. She's actually one of his converts that, when he was like preaching and stuff, he was a English convert. So like, his next wife is like super awesome, and then he's like a better husband to her. But I want to focus on here first. the reason when I first learned this story, it was kind of crazy to me, right? Because like I think in our head, we think of like these super Christian leaders in the past. We think of them as like awesome people with like no faults, right? William Carey obviously was a person just like us. Okay, we all have faults. Okay, there are no super Christians that don't sin. Okay, except for Jesus. So I think when we analyze life, we have to just, if we're trying to look for lessons, right? We have to look at some things that can be avoided, right? Because a lot of missionary agencies now have to look back on these past people, right? Especially ones that are super famous, and ask, what was wrong? Do I think that he lied, cheated, or stole? No. Do I think that he had lack of integrity? I don't think so. Right? Did he have a lack of love for the church or like love for the gospel? I don't think so. I think he really cared about Jesus. Right? So what did William Carey do wrong then? I think I'm gonna erase this. I think if we're looking for ways to improve upon that situation, right? We have to look at one factor first. All right, it's worth mentioning this. Care for your household. One of the things I see in William Carey's life that I really disagree with is that he bought books over like feeding his family. There's two ways to look at that. Okay, you can look at that as a minister and be like, well, the gospel comes first. You need to be growing and learning and being a better minister. I totally agree with that. I totally think you should go to seminary. Okay, even for a lot of people, it's hard on your family sometimes, but some people end up going to seminary, and I think it's worth it. Okay, I'm not saying that education and stuff is not worth it, but what I am saying is that you and your wife need to discuss together and figure out, right, how you're going to spend your money. I don't think in their marriage that they really talked about finances. It seems like to me, it seems like the personality of William Carey is like, this is God's will, that we don't eat meat. This is God's will that we, just buy books. that's the problem with really holy people sometimes, right? Is that they have their head in the clouds sometimes, right? They start differentiating between physical needs and spiritual needs. They say like, we always choose spiritual first. Think about the miracles of Jesus, right? Did Jesus only go around preaching the gospel? Did he only talk to people? He did. Okay, the Son of Man, right, Son of God, incarnate on earth, only has a couple years on earth. And what does he do? He heals physical illnesses. Right? And so if you think about it logically, like, this is dumb, right? People are going to die anyways. I mean, they're going to get diseases again anyways. Why heal physical illnesses? Because God cares. Because God cares about the physical body. I don't know if you're thinking about that, right? But life expectancy, for example, during Jesus' time is really short anyways. So why would you even heal physical illnesses if they're going to pass away a few years later? It's because God cares about the present. Right? Jesus himself cares about what is going on right now at this moment, as well as the future. Right? Your bodies were given to you by God. So all that to say, right? I think in the control of money, I think William Carey just kind of chose like, hey, I'm always going to go spiritual, not care about physical. All right? I think that's a problem. I think number two, he didn't. I use compassion, but I also use empathy. I don't think that William Carey really understood what it was like in his wife's shoes. Right? Like the exact things that she was going through. All right? And I say this also because there's other missionaries during the 1800s which kind of have that same kind of attitude. Like let's push forward at all costs. I don't think he took the time to really sit down and think about what his wife was going through and what their family was going through. I think he put the ministry first, and then he put his family second. And here's something crazy, right? Some ministers are really good about feeling the pain of others in their ministry, but really bad at feeling the pain of their own household. Okay, you can look, if you want to Wikipedia this stuff later. The founder of World Vision. World Vision is an awesome organization, multinational. I mean, governments want to work with World Vision. The founder, I think his name is Bob Pierce. His daughter committed suicide. I mean, here's a guy again in World Vision who is like changed like countless of lives, right? And like just helped so many orphans, so many broken families, but his own family was in disarray. I think same thing happens with William Carey. You know, he helps probably. Think about how many families he helped when he stopped widow burning. Right? He stopped a practice that probably killed like millions of people. And he stopped it. I mean, he just saved millions of people, but he couldn't save his own life. Because there wasn't, I think, compassion, empathy carried on to his family life. Alright? Number 3.
There's an E after patience.
When his wife was going through like her like psycho breakout, thing, I don't think he was patient and he did not persevere. And I say that because he got married 6 months later. You don't get married 6 months later unless you've been talking to the girl for a while. Okay, unless I'm wrong on this. Okay, it seemed like he wasn't there enough for his wife when she was going through her crazy episode. Patience, perseverance. And see, it's funny saying that, right? Because like, do I think William Carey persevered in India? He did. He's the first guy ever, right, to live in India as a missionary. And to like translate the Bible in all his languages and like recruit all his missionaries. I mean, he probably persevered more than he did persevere more than anyone else. Because the hardest job is to be the first one to do it, because no one's ever done it before. So he had to figure all this stuff by himself. So he during one part of his life, like back in those days, there was a fire. All right, there was a fire in the missionary compound. Everything was burned. All right, there's no online backup. You couldn't like upload like GDocs. All right, everything was burned. And then William Carey like basically came back to his house. 15 years of work was gone. And then when he writes his diary, he's like, you know what? He felt that God was testing him to see like how he would react after this. And he just got back to work the next day and just started rewriting all the stuff. That is crazy, right? 15 years of work gone in like an hour. And the next day he just starts working again. All right, William Carey did not just quit when things were hard. So what happened here? Again, I don't think he translated over to his family life. Okay, there was not any patience, there was not any perseverance in his family life. I'm gonna have you guys break into your groups. I want you to kind of discuss a question. A lot of these guys are young when they first started. A lot of you guys are young. So if you were William Carey's friends, what would you say to him? Okay, and I ask this because do I think that people like William Carey God stopped producing awesome, people in the church? I don't think so. Okay, I think some people maybe in this church going forward are be like next William Carey. So my question is, what if you have a friend like that? What if you have a friend in his position who's doing awesome ministry, doing awesome things for God, but yet you see this, tragedy in their family life? What would you say to them? Okay? Break into groups. 3 to 4 people. There's always more to talk about. More to explore. Again, the book is 25 Surprising Marriages. I hope you guys read it.
Are they Christian marriages?
It was never turned on.
Yeah, so this is a Christian book. Faith-building stories from the lives of famous Christians. Okay, William Peterson's the author. By the way, his correction, James Cook, not Chris Cook. Okay, James Cook was an explorer that William Carey followed. James Cook found Hawaii, Australia, Greenland, and all that stuff. All right, correction. All right, now we come back over the pond, and we come to America. All right, you guys know who probably actually is the most famous evangelist of the 1800s? Guess who that is? Well, maybe not the most, but one of the most.
Did you go to China?
He's an American evangelist.
Oh.
He pretty much stayed in America. There's a seminary named after him. He's actually pretty famous on the East Coast.
Wait,
Do you guys know Christian history or East Coast?
You don't know California?
D.L. Moody.
oh.
They actually have a publishing house. Some of the books, Christian books you read, some of the Christian books you read in the front will say Moody Publishing House. All right, he has a seminary. It's really famous. D.L. Moody. Again, not a very educated guy. Right? For some reason, blue collar people are super awesome. D.L. Moody sold shoes. So again, shoes. But he sold shoes, and I want you to understand how much money he made. Okay, a mechanic in those days. This is the 1800s. Right? A mechanic in those days made $500 a year. Okay, a mechanic. So it's blue collar, middle class. Right? D.L. Moody, she sold shoes. Again, right? He sold shoes.
Wow.
That's my salary.
What?
Alright? That's what D.L. Moody was insane salesman. Okay? He made $5,000 a year in commission for selling shoes on top of his salary. Okay? This was he's a kid at this time, right? He's a kid. I mean, he just loved to talk and he loved to sell. Alright? And then later on in his life, he started going to Sunday school, right? And then he started, I think the story was someone came to his shoe shop, told him to go to Sunday school. He's like, okay, I'll go. He goes to Sunday school, gets converted. All right, so now he's a Christian. His goal was actually to make $100,000 a year, right? $100,000 in those days, it's like a billionaire. It's like you basically be a billionaire selling shoes. Okay. But he probably would have made it too, but he got converted and he stopped doing that. All right. And then, this guy's an awesome salesman, right? So how does he do in church life? In church life, he starts his own Sunday school. Okay, his first year, starting a Sunday school, right? It's basically starting a harvest church. 600 people.
Wow.
I don't think our church can even fit 600 people as of right now. Right, 600 is at capacity for us. Year 2, 1,500 people.
Oh my God.
All right, you can kind of see why he's a famous evangelist, right? He was good, and he's like a little kid, right? He loved to talk about the Bible. All right, in one of his months, he had 99 speaking engagements in 1 month. So he's speaking 3 to 4 times a day in front of large crowds. Right? I think one of the accounts from people that knew him was his director for music during his crusades was D.L. Moody never gets tired. oh God, so please, like God, would you please make him tired so that the rest of us can get some rest. like he would just go and go and go. And here's what I think is funny about him. This means a lot to me. He was 5'10". I'm 5'10", just so you know. 250 pounds. Okay, I'm a bodybuilder. I'm 230 pounds. He's 5'10", not a bodybuilder, and 250 pounds. Okay, and he loved to eat. Like this guy's full, like just love to eat. He's a really, really interesting guy. What also interested me about him is that he didn't just care about growing the church too. One of the things that he really focused on, he also focused on building orphanages. He also worked on helping the poor, right? So like Moody Bible College today, it turns out a lot of people who help the poor, who help orphans and stuff like that. He carried his salesmanship over to like businessmen too. So when he's raising money for like the YMCA, just so you guys know, when it first started, it like helped middle class, lower class people, gave them like jobs and stuff like that. So when he was raising money for YMCA's, for like orphanages and stuff like that, he would basically go golfing with like businessmen, right? He's like, okay, let's go out and let's have a talk. At the end of the golf, like $250,000 check was cut right there. Like he was known for that. He was known like, oh shoot, I'm going golfing with D.L. Moody. Like bring my checkbook. Right? Like he was really, really good at selling, and he was a really awesome evangelist. So now you're wondering, what was his wife like? When we speak 99 times in a month, okay, you have a crazy life, right? I complain, when I speak 3 times a week, I get really upset. I'm like, guys, stop. I'm so tired. Okay, he spoke 3 times a day, right? And it's not like, 5 minutes, like, hi, bye. Like, he spoke and like, just went nuts, right? People got converted, all this stuff, okay? His wife, Emma, was not like it. All right, she was super conservative. He loved to be in the limelight. Right? He was okay being in front of thousands of people. Back in those days, they don't have TV, they don't have radio, right? So what do you do when you want to preach to a lot of people? You call huge meetings, right? So like Moody, like packing out Price Center every 3 hours. Okay, think about it. You guys seen Price Center packed, okay? Imagine Price Center being packed every 3 hours, and the same guy like preaching. That was his life, and he was okay with that. Like he was okay with like all these hundreds of people looking at him, and he was just preaching about Jesus, right? Just for like hours on end. All right, she didn't like that kind of stuff, and not many people are like that. She, on the other hand, she hated like to be in limelight. Like he would try all the time to get her to like, hey, I want you to speak too. Right, like she's like, you're my wife. Like, get up there and she would see the crowd. She's like, I'm not going up there. Right? You're psycho. Okay. She was a lot more conservative. And what I also mean by that, she was very ladylike. Ladylike meaning, she knew how to dress, she knew how to talk. She was very proper. And I count about D.L. Moody. Like when he was like courting his wife, okay, she had 2 sisters. Right? And he was like super awkward. Like he's like a shoe salesman, like blue collar. He couldn't write. Like if you read his writings, like it's like ridiculous. Carmen, what are some of the words he like misspelled?
Like great, G-R-A-T.
There you go. Things like that. Like when he wrote and when he talked, he was like
Run-on sentences, no punctuation.
Yeah, it's like a wall of text. I don't know if you guys ever like read people's writing. It's like a wall. Like they put in a Facebook wall, and they don't even like do paragraphs. They just like. That's what it was like, right? So when you met D.L. Moody, you're like, dude, this guy is like so dumb. What the heck? And he's like, great. Okay. His wife, on the other hand, ladylike. Okay. So this I wanted to encourage Jeremy with this, right? So because he's like so awkward, right? And like he wants to like court his wife. So what does he do? He brings 2 guys with him because he knew that she had 2 sisters. That's kind of awkward to me, right? But I can understand why he did it. It's just so like he would have a group with him, right? So that they're not all looking at him. Right? I mean, this is kind of the account of D.L. Moody, right? So basically, like this really, really proper girl, like she's like probably dressed really nice, like can use correct punctuation and grammar, and like, hey, what's up, everybody? I'm D.L. Moody. Let's raise some money for the orphanages and some YMCA's. All right. To give you kind of comparison, right? She was also a bookworm. Like she would love to read. She read a bunch of books. She learned both Latin and French. All right, this is for culture. If you're an American, you learn Latin and French. I mean, there's a reason you did that. It's because you were all about being proper, stuff like that. D.L. Moody, on the other hand, he didn't exercise. You can tell he was a fat guy, but he loved horses. So what he would do is he would you guys ever see buggies?
Yeah.
Like horse-drawn carriages. They're not carriages. It's like for fast transportation. So he would have horses. He would drive people around on his buggy. And his favorite thing to do was to make his horses go really, really fast and freak out his passengers. That was what he did for fun. It's like, hey guys, come in my buggy, and we'll go with not friends like that who drive really fast on the freeway. But he went really fast, and he laughed so hard, ha 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 ha. I was such a wuss. That's what he would do for fun. He's to freak his friends out. So that's the kind of guy. That's his personality. She, on the other hand, loves to read. What I like about their marriage, what I like about their marriage is that she really balanced him. Okay, there are a lot of stories of just how she balanced him. So, for example, when you speak 99 times in a month, okay, you have a lot of emails and letters you need to write afterwards. Okay, you need to be hey, thank you so much for letting me speak. I hope to this next month we'll do a meeting here. Da 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 da. Right? You ever have friends who go hey, I'll email you, I'll call you, text you back, right? And they don't do it. That was him. So basically, there's stories of Emma, she would be with him, right? He'd be oh yeah, let me write you a letter. And she's okay, I will write that full letter. She basically took care of all the behind the scenes work. Right? So every time he had meeting with somebody, she's okay, you have a meeting at this time, and I have to write that guy a letter again. Right? That was her personality. One of the really good stories kind of illustrate this out. When D.L. Moody Seminary was starting on the East Coast, there was a bunch of drama. Right? Anytime you start something, there's drama. So the board of trustees, the staff, all stuff, were in a huge fight and arguing about where should we go as vision, all that stuff. And D.L. Moody's the president, right? It's named after him. And he's you know what? This is stupid. I don't care anymore. So he resigns. Okay. And his wife is okay, you can't resign from your own seminary. Right? That's your name on the seminary. Right? So she knew the project would fall apart. She goes home, writes a 19-page letter, all right, to the board and the staff, and convinces them to stay. And then she goes to D.L. Moody and convinces them not to resign. All right, that's the kind of woman that she was. All right, D.L. Moody, as talented as he was, he had a lot of rough edges. Okay, a lot of rough edges. He had the best upbringing, right? He was a shoe salesman. And so for her, she really, really balanced them out. Accounts of her, for example, they had children, right? And when you're in the public limelight, people look at your children all the time. And the children actually grew up okay. And they asked him, no, so how do you guys raise your family then, right? And then her children said, Mom. Mom pretty much raised us, right? And again, did she resent that? I don't think so, right? The account of her life was that Emma loved being with D.L. Moody, right? She loved being part of his ministry, right? She wasn't oh my gosh, D.L., you gotta send 20 letters out. How come you haven't done that yet? You have to not resign from your seminary. How can you do that? How come you're doing this? How can you do she wasn't like that, right? She saw herself okay, my husband is needed. He's not just famous in America, but he starts getting famous in England too. So at one period in their life, they go to England for 20 months. 1800s, you've heard of England? An American preacher comes to you. What do you think? I don't care, right? So, when they go, and people are oh, he's famous, they're I don't really care. 20 months later, the accounts say the entire British Isles were aflame for the gospel. The entirety of the British Isles, right? One guy in 20 months. Okay? D.L. Moody wasn't just good in America. He was just good overall, right? He got people really excited about the church. This is a time when everyone goes to church, right? People just go for attendance, to look good. But D.L. Moody got people actually excited about who God is. 20 months later, England was excited too. The thing with Emma is she loved that, right? She didn't resent the fact that her husband was making a difference. She wasn't hey, when are you take me to Valentine's Day dinner, or when are you gonna do this for me, and da da da, right? She was okay, so we're going to England. Let's take the kids. This is what we gotta pack. This is what we gotta do. This is how we get the tickets. Da da da. That kind of personality, and she was okay with that. D.L. Moody too really appreciated. He saw the value of his wife. Right? He wasn't just you're my secretary for life. Right? I'm going to pay you because you're my wife. he didn't treat her like that. right? He really, really respected her. There's an episode early on in life, he actually put her in charge of one of his Sunday schools, right? And the Sunday schools had like guys in it, and like conservative Christians like, oh my gosh, well, we can't teach guys, especially like older ones too. And so people ask him like, hey, DL, like, is it proper for your wife to teach this class? She's like, yeah, she's my wife, right? Like he really, really supported like his wife and everything that she did. So in that, right, I'm really encouraged. I mean, here's a guy who's just like straight up like, you know what? I'm all about being charismatic. I'm all about like just going out and selling stuff and being loud and getting people excited and stuff like that. But the person he appreciated the most in his life was someone who was quiet. Okay? I mean, he probably spent the most time with her. Why was he an evangelist? Why was he not a missionary? He got a lot of opportunities to go overseas and do stuff. He decided not to. Right? He decided to stay with his family. He felt his family life was actually really important. Right? So that's why he was an evangelist in America, mostly on the East Coast. Right? Because he really wanted to care for his family. He really wanted to support his wife. So here's a different way that the marriage ended. When D.L. Moody passed away, right, his wife was crushed. Right? She actually didn't remarry. She was crushed and she passed away like soon afterwards. It's a really sad story, but it shows you that just how much they cared for each other. Right? Like his wife, without him, she didn't know how to go on with her life anymore. Because she cared for him so much. And like she didn't resent the fact that his ministry was super big. Right? But she's like, you know what, I'm part of his ministry. I want to support you as a person, not just as an evangelist. Right? But as a husband, as a father of our children, I want to support you. That's super encouraging. Okay? I mean, I think about people like that today. I mean, I think about, people in public ministry today who can do what D.L. Moody did. I mean, who does this? Who doubles their Sunday school, in like a year, when you're like 20 years old, like just starting out? No one does that. Right? Even today, no one's that good. Right? Who sells that many shoes? That's crazy the amount of shoes that you're selling. Alright? I think at one point, like, if you went to the East Coast and you saw some Christian charity, something like that, D.L. Moody's name was associated with it. Like somehow D.L. Moody raised funds to build your church or to build your like homeless shelter or whatever. Like D.L. Moody was like everywhere on the East Coast. Okay? I mean, he was just that good. But at the same time, he had a family life. At the same time, he can say, well, because I'm so good, the world needs me. Right? I need to go out there. I need to go to China. I need to go to like India. I need to go to like all these places. The world needs me. Forget my family. He didn't do that. As good as he was, he saw that his place was to still care for his family first. Right? And I mean, you can see it in his wife. His wife stayed by him the entire way. So on his wife's side, here's my encouragement to a lot of girls. Right? You guys don't have to be similar. I feel like for a lot of people when they get together, like, we have to be like really similar in a lot of ways. I don't think that's true. Okay, I mean here is a woman who is like pretty much as far away as you can be from D.L. Moody. Right? No one is as outgoing as D.L. Moody. Right? And probably very few people were as conservative, ladylike, and smart as she was. And they were okay. They worked it out. Right? And she didn't try to conform him. Right? I think that was a huge issue in any marriage like that. A lot of marriages don't work. One person tries to conform the other person. Like, hey, I'm outgoing. I want you to be outgoing too. Right? I want you to love to sell shoes. Or I want you to love to be in front of crowds. They try to do that to each other. They're just like, you know what? You are the way you are. I'm the way I am. That's okay. She was super ladylike, and in a way that didn't annoy him and nag. Okay, I think that's a really important key. I think there's always a danger in relationships for one person to nag the other person. Right? Like, hey, why don't you lose some weight? Or like, hey, how come you never have correct grammar? Or hey, how come you never write your letters back? She didn't do that. She just did her work. Right? And she supported him as a person. I think that's super important. And she's also just really good with family. Right? I mean, she was okay not being in the limelight. And I say that because I don't want to assume anything. In our culture, at UCSD especially, IT communications, we love feminism and you know what? You have an awesome life if you have an awesome career. Don't ever let anyone tell you that like having kids is good enough. Like, You need to be like a CEO of a company, or it's like you failed in life. Or you need to be like a PhD or something, or you failed in life. She was okay just being Dale Moody's wife. She was okay just being a wife. And I mean, that's a huge message for our culture today. Is it okay for the women in the class for you just to be a wife? Right? For you to not be famous yourself. Right? For you not to be known as like the best businesswoman or the the most talented educator or whatever. Right? For you just to raise your kids well. I mean, she could have resented that, right? Because I mean, think about all the people today, like Michelle Obama. Think about Hillary Clinton, for example. Okay, she like resents it that when people talk about her husband, right? If you say it is Hillary Clinton, and she's like, oh, what about your husband? Da da da. She's like, okay, I'm Secretary of the State. All right, let's not talk about Bill Clinton anymore. All right, I'm Secretary of the State. Like she's like very much like, don't you know who I am? All right. What I find awesome in Emma is that she's not like that. Okay, she's again being humble. All right, that's a Christian virtue. There's humility, and she's okay with serving. She's okay. It's like if my life is just about serving this family and Dale Moody, I'm okay with that. And again, that's confirmed that when he passed away, she was really, really sad. So that's something that hopefully you guys will look into this more. Dale Moody, his wife Emma, you guys will look into this more. But what I'm trying to encourage you guys is a good ministry life does not mean you have to sacrifice your family. It does mean you have to work together very closely. It does mean you have to put your family first. It does mean, I think, as Christian people, that we have to be understanding of others. And to say, I'm a certain way, you're a certain way, how do we work together? All right, I'm always scared of young people. All right, young people are like the worst at this. Young people are like, the moment you learn anything, you're like, you know what, if you don't think like me or act like me, you're wrong. And not only are you wrong, you're probably not a Christian. And not only you're not a Christian, you're probably like the worst person I ever met. Okay? Like, young people, like, just go on this one-track mind, like, if you're not like me, you're against me, and all that stuff. But in their relationship, they have an appreciation of people who are different than themselves, right? And they work together really well. Another lesson I think you can learn from this is that you have to be okay with living a humble life. Okay, and I mean that both ways, right? I mean, especially after you get married, all right? You have to be okay with saying, I'm going to say no to some things. So, for example, Dale Moody, he could have done more. I guarantee he could have done more, right? His time was during Hudson Taylor's time, right? He could have gone at William Carey's time. He could have gone to India, gone to China, and just went nuts. Like, he probably could have built so many orphanages and like helped so many people. He turned down opportunities, right? I don't think that only the UK invited him to come speak. I guarantee you, like a lot of places wanted him to come speak. He didn't. All right? He turned down opportunities to support his family and to say, my family is important. And he's not lazy, right? Some people turn stuff down because they're lazy. He's not lazy. But he said, my family comes first. I think for Emma, she was okay in the midst of like kind of chaos, right? We talked about Dorothy Carey earlier, right? William Carey lived a chaotic life, right? Moving all over the place and like learning languages and stuff, and she went nuts. Emma, when your husband is literally like traveling all over the East Coast and like speaking every day, and all these people, he's famous, right? All these people are coming at him. They have a chaotic life. I mean, their lives are being watched, like paparazzi style, like every single minute, and she was okay with that. And I think not only was she okay with that, but she learned to adapt and still, right, wanted and desired to be humble. Okay, because you see in our culture what happens if you get a lot of attention. You become like the Kardashians. Okay, you'd love to like be skanky and like get more attention and like do bad stuff. She actually did the opposite, right? When she got attention and stuff like that, she took more effort to really care and say like, hey, you know what, that's what we do in public. We have a family life. We have boundaries, right? And I'm humble enough to say, I'm okay with just being a wife. I'm okay with us, living in the chaos, but I'm going to create space for us and serve our family. All right? That's important for us. We're not going to break into groups again, but I do. Who's not in this? Oh, I'm not going to say this, but who's in a small group in this room? Who's in a small group?
That's basically has to say
Okay. Okay, that's my encouragement to you guys, though. All right, small groups. I need you guys to continually talk about this kind of stuff with your small groups. All right, and affirm and encourage each other. All right. I think this is important because a lot of times our most important decisions aren't made in community. We kind of just like, hey, I have this important decision to make, I'm going to do it myself. Or I need advice, I'm going to go watch TV or just sit by myself and think about it. Or pray about it with myself. God uses people. Okay? God uses people, God uses community. I really encourage you guys to get plugged into your community and ask those hard questions. Get to know what's going on in each other's lives. Alright? I think as we kind of work things out in the community, we'll start to appreciate, things like humility, things like service, right? Things like putting family first, things like that. Okay? So I hope this is not in here. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you just for the people you've raised up in history and how they teach us today. May you continue just to bless us and watch over us and guide our paths so that we are holy, blameless, and acceptable to you. God, we want to have good family lives. We want to know what that means to be a good husband one day, a good father one day, but above all, just a good Christian, a good brother and sister in Christ. So God, help us, give us patience, give us perseverance, give us a desire to know more about who you are and where you're leading us. God, we want to be pleasing in your sight, and may you do this by your Spirit. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let's hope you're hearing.
Alright.
Actually, when I read these stories, all these famous early Christians, leaders like that, they're all super awkward. I'm like, I probably won't be friends with you. like reading ministry together, I've been like, hey man, you're kind of awkward. I don't think you're gonna do too well.
Okay. You'll become famous someday.
Maybe you will, David. Maybe next kind of shaker.
Hey, I'm Jeremy.
Is that nice? Yeah, is that nice? Is that nice?
Was Francis Schaeffer awkward?
I don't know.
Oh.
But I mean, he had a crazy following though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's probably yes.